My next novel launches on the 11th of April. It's called Just Another Knife Crime, and although it features many of the characters from my earlier books, the main protagonist is one of the younger generation of detectives, who up until now has only played a supporting role. Andy Lepage has just been promoted to DI, and this is his very first murder investigation as Senior Investigating Officer. It looks like a straightforward case, except that nobody knows who the victim is. And then, when the murdered man's name comes to light, and his family are informed, Andy begins to question his own identity. Do he and the victim have more in common than at first appeared? Here's how the story begins. Hold and rest. That's better. Very good. That really conveyed the feelings behind the music. Dr. Piers Clawton, tutorial fellow, organist and choir master at Holy Cross College, bent over his pupil and rested his left hand gently on his shoulder for a few moments, in a gesture of approval. I think we'll call it a day now. Carry on practising the fingering on the piano, and I'll see you again next week at the usual time. Yes, Dr. Clawton. Thank you. Gabriel leaned forward to gather up the pages of sheet music from which he had been playing. He stowed them carefully in the music case that he had been given for his 13th birthday 3 months earlier, before swinging his legs over the organ bench and getting to his feet. He enjoyed his weekly lessons with the middle-aged Don, who had a knack of giving just the right balance of encouragement and criticism to spur him on to greater efforts, without implying that his playing was inadequate. However, the knowledge that his mother would be getting a report on his progress when she took her morning coffee in the senior common room the next day gave them an element of risk that sometimes made him uncomfortable. Casting his mind back over the last 2 hours, he was confident that on this occasion there was nothing that she could interpret as indicating a lack of diligence or aptitude on his part. He got up, and Dr. Clawton took his place in front of the manuals, placing a new sheaf of music on the stand, and pulling and pushing stops in readiness for beginning his own practice. Christmas always came early in Oxford, because of the need for carol services and other celebrations to take place before the undergraduates left for home during the first week in December. He had a concert of seasonal music looming, and his performance needed to be perfect. As Gabriel made his way down the steep steps from the organ loft, a familiar melody from Handel's Messiah reverberated through the chapel. Without thinking, he joined in with the soprano line, "For unto us a child is born." He reached the foot of the stairs and stepped out into the passageway that divided the chapel from the hall, with its kitchens and storerooms. This was the rear entrance of the college, a narrow tunnel running through the building from Al-Qatani Quad, previously more prosaically known as the Back Quad, but recently renamed following refurbishments funded by a generous benefactor, to Goose Lane. "And the government shall be upon his shoulder, and the gov—" He broke off as, turning to the left to make his way out, he saw a cluster of people in a uniform of white tunics and black trousers. The white hats and striped aprons indicated that they were some of the kitchen staff, taking a break from preparing dinner for the students and fellows of the college. Gabriel approached them in silence. They were standing across the door to the outside world, blocking his exit. As he drew nearer, one of them glanced his way, and then turned back and continued chatting with his colleagues. "Excuse me," Gabriel said politely. "May I go through?" Instantly they all turned and stared at him. There were 3 of them, 2 men and a woman, all dressed alike, and all with cigarettes in their hands. "Excuse me," mimicked a youngish man with a shaved head in an exaggeratedly posh, rather camp accent. "May I come through?" Then, dropping the mocking voice, he continued, "And what are you doing here then, anyway?" "I've been in the chapel for a music lesson," Gabriel explained nervously. "What? They having bongo drums in there now?" scoffed the other man, a lanky redhead with big hands, which he was now moving up and down in front of him in a parody of playing African drums. "No, I'm learning the organ," Gabriel replied, knowing that they were making fun of him, but unable to think of a way of extricating himself from the conversation. "With Dr. Clawton." "Oh, listen to him!" The young woman stepped forward and leered at him. "He's been playing with Dr. Clawton's organ." "Ooh, you naughty boy!" the first man screamed, mincing towards Gabriel with one hand on his hip and the other waving his cigarette aloft in a gesture worthy of a 1970s comedy show. Gabriel backed away. "It's all right, I'll go round the other way." But they were all around him now. He was trapped. "So Dr. Clawton likes them exotic, does he?" demanded the red-headed man. Gabriel stared back at him in perplexity. What did he mean? "Pays you in bananas, does he?" the woman joined in. "No, he doesn't pay me. Mum pays him for the lessons," Gabriel replied, bewildered by the banter, but still anxious to be polite. "Whoo, whoo, whoo!" taunted the redhead, lifting his arms in imitation of a gorilla and pretending to scratch under his armpits. "Look, he's got a handbag." The woman pointed down at Gabriel's music case. "Let's have a look." The shaved-head man grabbed the case and wrenched it from Gabriel's hand. "No, give that back!" he protested. "It's mine. My dad gave it to me." Somehow the whole group moved out into the lane, propelling Gabriel with them. The music case was open now, and precious sheets containing the pieces that he was supposed to practice for his next lesson were dropping into the muddy gutter, filled with dead leaves and discarded cigarette ends. Gabriel bent down to retrieve them, but the red-headed man took hold of him and forced him back against the wall of the college. "Don't you talk like that to us," he growled. "Where did the likes of you get this sort of stuff?" "He's right," the woman backed him up, coming up and putting her painted face uncomfortably close to Gabriel's. "It's no good you claiming this stuff is all legit. I'll bet you pinched it from one of the students." No, honestly," Gabriel pleaded. "It's mine. My mum bought it for me. Please, give it back. I'll be in trouble if I can't practice." "What do you think?" Still pinning Gabriel to the wall with one hand, the man looked round at his companions. "Shall we give him his handbag back?" "Nah," the woman shook her head. "Hand it into the porters as lost property." "Good idea," agreed the shaved-head man. "If it really is his, he can claim it back, can't he?" "OK." Gabriel looked from face to face, with pleading in his eyes. "Give it to the porters, but let me pick up the music. It's getting all messed up." The redhead stared at him as if he was debating what to do next. The other two leaned against the wall and took slow drags on their cigarettes. Time seemed to stand still. I hope that's whetted your appetite. If you'd like to know more about the book or order a copy for yourself, have a look at my website or Facebook page.